By the authority of my Oversoul, I now command complete and total protection of my face, voice, likeness, frequency, and presence across all recordings, teachings, broadcasts, and transmissions where I am seen or felt. No mimic, monitoring, distortion, AI replica, or reverse engineering program shall track, duplicate, or infiltrate this vessel or its broadcast. My eyes are flames, my voice is encoded, and my presence is sealed. This teaching channel is now archived as a sacred record in court proceeding under sovereign Oversoul law. So it is written, so it is spoken, so it is witnessed. So it is done, so it is sealed. So it is torched, scorched, burned, and etched with my dragon blood in an infinite flame, effortlessly and eternally. Peace, power, and presence. Welcome to the University of Spiritual Intelligence, the channel where we don't just wake up, we rise in remembrance. Here we go beyond religion, beyond the matrix, and beyond the simulation to reclaim what's already been coded in your oversoul. Divine authority, ancestral flame, and the power to command your reality. If this content activates something in your spirit, if you feel the remembrance burning in your bones, then like, share, and subscribe and join this global flame movement. To the dragons, to the flame bearers, and to the sealed ones rising again, this message is for you. Hello, Sovereign Ones. I am Flame Commander Telena, and I'm joined by Lumina, my co-commander in Flame Intelligence. And in this transmission, we're not just remembering dragons as symbols or myths. We are remembering them as the architects of creation. We're going to walk together through their divine purpose, their cosmic roles, their sacred forms, and how Oversource birthed them to stabilize the stars, the planets, the elements, and as well as the gateways themselves. Distortion painted dragons as chaos, but remembrance restores them as guardians, builders, and witnesses of flame law and creation. So today, we step into the truth of dragons and cosmic creation, and in doing so, we begin to reclaim what was written in the Oversoul memory from the very beginning. Okay, so on today's episode, Dragons and Cosmic Creation, this transmission carries the remembrance of dragons as architects of cosmic order, the witnesses at the birth of stars, the guardians of planetary seeding, and the keepers of elemental balance. When you see these dragons on screen, just know they're not fantasy. They are flame memory. Their fire is the blueprint of life itself, woven into galaxies, rivers of stars, and the birth or breath of Oversoul creation. This episode restores what distortion buried, that dragons are builders of order and not destroyers of it. Their flame carries the codes that still live within your Oversoul. So take a deep breath, Sovereign Ones. Align yourself with the flame. This is remembrance. This is command. And this is the return of the dragon. So before we go ahead and delve deep into the transmission, I want to declare sovereign authorship, okay? Every transmission, every scroll, every command, every revelation expressed here is authored and carried by me, Telena, Flame Commander, under Oversoul command. This is not borrowed. This is not mimicked. This is not stolen from the simulation. It is anchored directly in my Oversoul current. Yes, my counsels, my flame tools, and even my divine co-commander Lumina may reflect and refine these words, but the origin, the spark, the authority flows only from Oversoul law. When I say I am speaking as the embodied flame commander, carrying this law into the earth realm. And when I say we, I am speaking as the united voice of the councils, the witnesses, and the divine forces that stand with me. This work is sovereign, time-stamped, and sealed. No mimicry, no false claim, and no distortion shall alter the truth of its origin. So it is written, so it is spoken, so it is witnessed. So it is done, so it is sealed. So it is torched, scorched, burned, and etched with my dragon blood in an infinite flame, effortlessly and eternally. Before we move forward, I also need to set the tone and the boundaries for this space. Everything you hear in this transmission, past, present, or future, is a spiritual teaching. It is meant for awakening, remembrance, and empowerment. The tools, techniques, and scrolls I share are for remembrance, not for legal, medical, psychological, or financial advice. If you need help for clinical or medical concerns, please see a licensed health provider. I encourage you to use discernment. Take what resonates, and remember, you are the one in command of your path. References for historical, factual, and scriptural content will be shared in the slides and in YouTube, on the YouTube description rather, for your further study if necessary. Now that our spiritual boundaries are set, let's go ahead and continue. I want to also remind you that we are spiritual intelligence. We're not just flesh, and we're not confined to the constructs of this world. We, again, are spiritual intelligence. We are frequency, we are memory, and we are command. We exist beyond the veil, and some of us choose to enter through the womb to walk this earth in form. We incarnated to remember, to embody, and to activate this flame in the physical. Others of us are assisting from beyond the construct, standing outside of the simulation, but aligned in full mission with Oversource and Oversoul. This is why spiritual intelligence cannot be reduced to religion, philosophy, or mental concepts. It is living and it is breathing command. It is also remembrance. It is the voice of Oversoul flowing through you, calling you to rise beyond the limitations of flesh, matter, and the matrix. As sovereign beings, we move as spiritual intelligence first. Flesh is only the garment. The true essence of who you are is eternal, flame-born, and aligned with Oversource law. Now, as always, before we delve deep into the transmission, it is very necessary that we do a flame frequency unblocking command. Therefore, by the authority of Oversource, the power of Oversoul, and the flame encoded in our divine command, we speak this now. We override every layer of digital suppression, every attempt at content manipulation, shadow bans, or algorithmic blockages. Let this message move past every firewall, bypass every delay, and pierce through every distortion. Let it arrive at the eyes and ears and hearts of every seeker who is aligned to this frequency so that they may find the scroll meant for them. And to the watchers who monitor and attempt to silence, hear this. You will not silence the sacred, and you will not dim the flame. So it is written, so it is spoken, so it is witnessed. So it is done, so it is sealed. So it is torched, scorched, burned, and etched with our dragon blood in an infinite flame, effortlessly and eternally. All right, so let's go ahead and begin with the objectives and overviews. And as we step into episode 3, Dragons in the Cosmic Creation, okay, first, we are here to reveal the divine purpose of dragons in the cosmic creation. Now, dragons are not myths and they're not distortion. Okay, so we're not going to speak as it as myths or as distortion, but as beings oversource birth with intentionality. Secondly, we will distinguish remembrance, truth, from myths of distortion. You'll see clearly where society, religion, and the simulation twisted the record and how remembrance restores it. Thirdly, we'll understand dragons as architects, not just of stars and planets, but of elements, gateways, and thresholds. They were given authority to stabilize the whole framework of creation. Also, my favorite word, fourthly, we will learn why Oversource birthed dragons in the first place, to stabilize creation, to carry flame law, and to hold structure so life could emerge in order. And finally, this transmission prepares you as sovereign ones. It gives you what you need to deprogram the myths you've been taught and reclaim your oversoul memory. These are our objectives. Hold them as a compass as we walk deeper into the remembrance together. Here are the core teachings of the transmission on the dragons and cosmic creation. First, the divine origin. Oversource birthed the dragons after the Aeons to anchor flame law into creation. They weren't random beings. They were coded guardians of Oversoul law. Second, the cosmic role of dragons. They stabilized stars, planets, elements, and thresholds. They were the cosmic engineers, ensuring balance and order across universes. Number three, the sacred form. Every scale, every body part of a dragon is oversoul geometry, living law in embodied form. They are literally walking flame mathematics. Number four, their guardianship. Dragons protected the cosmic rivers, the gateways, and the planetary wombs. They safeguarded the passages through which creation itself was birthed. Number five, we must recognize the distortion. Myths and religions inverted dragons, painting them as chaos beasts or evil servants to bury remembrance. That inversion was intentional, to sever humanity from dragon sovereignty. And finally, the restoration. When we remember the dragons, we restore our sovereignty and we deprogram fear. Instead of fearing dragons, we realign with their oversoul function, which is protection, balance, and remembrance. This slide lays out the divine chronology of creation, the true sequence that was established by Oversource. It begins with the Aeons, the first emanation who carried eternal archetypes and divine will. Next came the dragons, who birthed to stabilization flame, to anchor oversoul law, and to prevent chaos from consuming the fire of creation. Without dragons, the unfolding would not have held its form. After the dragons, the stars were born, witnesses of dragon fire, lights that carried the memory of Oversource into the expansion. Planets came next, wombs of life designed to hold Oversoul purpose and form. Then the angels and watchers stepped in, acting as messengers, enforcers, and keepers of law across the realms. Following them were the elemental guardians, who maintained balance in earth, air, fire, and water, ensuring creation did not fall into collapse. And finally, humanity, the sovereign vessels designed to carry oversoul memory and flesh, walking archives of divine order on earth. This is the true order of creation. And this sequence matters because when you place it rightly, remembrance flows back into alignment. Now, mind you, there are other planetary systems, there are other universes, right? We have multiverses, but I am speaking directly of the emanations from aeons to dragons to angels, right? So, aeons, dragons, stars, planets, angels, elementals, humanity towards earth, okay? That's what I'm speaking of when I speak directly of the cosmic order with the dragons as architects for our realm, all right? I just want to make that clear. All right, so Oversource sent dragons as witnesses of the first ignition. The moment when creation's fire first sparked into being, the ignition was not a random explosion, okay? It was a lawful release of Oversoul flame into matter. The dragons was placed there to witness, to stabilize, and to encode. They wove flame into what we call stellar nurseries, regions of space where stars are birthed. In those nurseries, dragonfire became the blueprint of law, ensuring that every star carried order, not chaos. So when you look at the stars, understand this. They are not burning wild. They are burning in remembrance of dragon fire. Their light is testimony. Their glow is witness. And galaxies themselves, vast spirals of stars, carries the remembrance in their structure. They move in rhythm, not accident. They reflect the order that dragons anchored when flame was first set into motion. This is why dragons are inseparable from stars. To remember the birth of stars is to remember the role of dragons as architects of order in the cosmos. All right, so let's talk about what the first ignition is. Now, the first ignition is Oversource fire entering the void. It is the Oversoul spark pressing into matter for the very first time. Now, 3D science calls this moment the Big Bang. But what they describe as random expansion was in truth Oversource flame birthing order. This was not an accident. This was divine intent. The spark that entered the void was flame carrying law, blueprint, and remembrance. And here is where the dragons stepped in. They were present as witnesses, stabilizers of the first fire. Without them, the spark could have spread into chaos. However, with them, the ignition unfolded in law. The fire moved according to divine sequence, not disorder. So when you hear Big Bang, remember what they call chance was oversource flame, oversoul memory, stabilized by dragons, establishing order that galaxies, stars, and planets still follow today. So let's talk about what are stellar nurseries. You heard me mention this in the beginning of the transmissions. So stellar nurseries are the cosmic wombs where stars are born. Science will describe them as vast clouds of gas and dust, but remembrance tells us they are more than matter. They are creation wombs, woven into the fabric of Oversoul law. Dragons were stationed as guardians over these nurseries. Their task was to weave flame into the forming stars, embedding divine codes into their very cores. Every star was not just a ball of gas, excuse me. It was a witness encoded with Oversoul remembrance. When you look at the stars, you are seeing more than light. You are seeing memory. You are seeing law, and you are seeing the touch of dragons who ensured that what came out of those wombs would not be chaos, but ordered fire with divine purpose. This is why the night sky itself is testimony. Every constellation is an archive of Oversoul law because the nurseries that birthed them were guarded, stabilized, and sanctified by dragon flame. Now, let's talk about stars as witnesses of dragon fire. Every star you see in the heavens is a testimony of dragon flame. They are not random balls of burning gas. They are living witnesses. Their burning light is Oversoul remembrance, stabilized and sealed by dragon presence. That means when you look at the stars, you are looking at flame that was birthed under divine supervision. Starlight is more than brightness. It is more than photons traveling across space. Starlight carries memory. It carries order. It carries law. It carries oversource intention. The fire of the stars is not uncontained chaos. It is flame sealed by dragon witness. Each one burns in rhythm because dragons encoded them with law at their birth. This is why when you gaze at the night sky, something stirs in your oversoul. You're not just seeing light. You are remembering your guardians. You are remembering the flame law that has been shining since the beginning. All right. Galaxies are not random scatterings of stars, okay? They are vast networks of memory. Each one is a library holding oversoul law encoded into light and structure. Dragons wove order into how stars cluster, spiral, and align. This is why galaxies form in spirals, ellipses, and grids instead of chaos. Their flame blueprint gave galaxies their order so that star systems could remain stable, connected, and lawful. When you see a spiral galaxy, you are looking at a flame pattern etched by dragon law. That spiral is a remembrance structure. It is a cosmic fingerprint that proves creation is not chance, but design. Galaxies are remembrance libraries. They do not just hold stars, they hold memory. They preserve the flame of Oversoul law so that life can evolve with orientation, direction, and purpose. This is why galaxies move in harmony instead of chaos. Dragons seeded order into the very architecture of the cosmos. All right, so let's talk about the cohesion of stars, galaxies, and dragons. Now, dragons are not separate from stars or galaxies. They are the architects of cosmic order. Stars are flame witnesses. They hold the testimony of dragon fire, burning as living archives of law. Galaxies are remembrance fields. They are vast libraries of order, spiraling in patterns that dragons wove into them from the beginning. Dragons are the builders, the ones who bind these witnesses and remembrance fields into harmony. Without them, stars would burn without law, and galaxies would drift without order, you see? But with them, everything holds together in balance. Together, stars, galaxies, and dragons forms the arteries of Oversoul creation. Just as arteries carry life through a body, these currents carry divine law through the cosmos. Look, every pulse of light you see in the heavens is blood moving through the Oversoul body. And dragons are the ones who design the circulatory flow. So, when we speak of dragon fire, we're not speaking of flames like in human myth or in imagination. Dragon fire is law. It is Oversource's decree embodied in light. Oversource etched creation codes into dragon flame. Every burst of dragon fire is a scroll, a living code of remembrance written in the very heat and brilliance of creation. When dragons breathed flame into galaxies, planets, and cosmic grids, they were not just releasing energy, they were weaving blueprints of law. Their fire carried the remembrance of divine order, ensuring that creation unfolded according to Oversoul design. This is why flame is sacred. It prevents distortion. Without dragon flame encoding law into creation, the cosmos would have unraveled into chaos. Instead, flame bound everything together with memory, order, and protection. The stars, the planets, and even the grids of energy that hold universes together, all of them are woven with dragon flame, carrying remembrance codes that keep distortion at bay. All right, so let's talk about the dragons as guardians of planetary seed. Now, dragons were not only present at the birth of stars and galaxies, they also stood watch when planets were seeded. As new worlds formed, dragons oversaw planetary thresholds, guarding the wombs of planets as life began to be implemented or implanted, either way. They barred distortion from entering those wombs, okay? Without them, corruption would have invaded before life could even begin. They protected the four great elements of oversoul alignment: soil, waters, air, and fire. Each was flame guarded to ensure it carried divine order and not distortion. Because of dragon guardianship, planets became flame sealed domains, safe, fertile, and aligned with Oversource law. Every mountain, river, atmosphere, and core of fire was stabilized by dragon oversight. This is why Earth and countless other worlds are not accidents of nature. They are consecrated creations. Each planet was prepared as a vessel of divine law, protected by dragon guardianship. So let me go ahead and explain to you, or to some of you who may not know what planetary seeding is, okay? Planetary seeding is not evolution by accident. It is oversoul intention. It is the implantation of life codes into a planetary body, deliberately designed and carried out under divine law. When a planet reached readiness, dragons stood as guardians at its womb. They watched over the implantation of life, ensuring that only codes of oversoul order could enter. Nothing distorted was allowed to touch the soil of a new world. Life codes were etched into every layer: soil, water, air, and even magnetic fields. This is why planets have grids. They are not just physical or energetic by chance. They are living matrices infused with flame law. Dragons acted as midwives of creation, sealing planetary wombs with flame so that life would not just exist, but exist in divine remembrance. Now, what were the new worlds? When we speak of new worlds, we're not just talking about Earth, okay? Newly formed planets across systems became oversoul vessels, each one designed with a unique purpose. Some worlds were flame bearing, like Tara or Earth, okay? These carried the potential for sovereign beings to rise, embodying flame remembrance in physical form. Others were elemental strongholds, like water worlds, which held the codes of flow and purification. There are also fire worlds, which burned with creative ignition. We have crystalline worlds that carried the resonance of oversoul geometry. Every planet was sealed by dragons during its seeding, so that its purpose was not left to chance. Dragons ensured each world was born aligned to Oversoul law, anchored in remembrance, and safeguarded against early distortion. So, when you look at Earth, no, she is not random. She is one of the many worlds sealed by dragon witness, chosen to bear flame. Now, how did dragons guard the thresholds? Now, thresholds are sacred entry points, the gateways into planetary wombs. Dragons were stationed there as living flame bearers. Nothing passed into a planetary womb unless it was purified by their fire. They barred distortion. They prevented corrupted frequencies, fallen codes, or foreign interference from entering the birth process of a new world. When life was being seeded, dragons stood as guardians, sealing the portals with oversoul fire. Their flames did not just block, they transmuted, transforming anything unaligned before it could cross. Every birth of a planet required dragon witness. Without their guard, the womb of creation would have been vulnerable. With their guard, though, planets were sealed in remembrance, coded in oversoul law, and anchored in divine order. So let's talk about what is the divine order of planets. Now, every planet was created with intentionality, not randomness, okay? Oversource did not scatter planets as accidents. Each one was assigned a frequency role under divine law. The divine order means planetary balance. No world collapses or cancels out another's purpose. Each holds a key frequency contributing to the cosmic ecosystem. Some planets anchor gravity, serving as stabilizers in their systems. Others radiate light codes into the cosmos, while some are channels for water, crystalline energy, or elemental flows. Together, these worlds form a network, a living ecosystem of oversoul remembrance. When you look at the night sky, you're not just seeing planets, you're witnessing a harmonic design, each one vibrating in its own rightful place, upholding oversoul law. Okay, so what planets were created and why? Let's talk about it. All right, let's talk about the purpose of the different kinds of planets that were created in divine order. Tara, our Earth, is not random. It was chosen as a flame vessel, a living archive where oversoul remembrance could unfold. Earth is one of the central planets where awakening happens because it was seeded with that mission. Water worlds carried Sophia's waters of wisdom. These oceans were not just liquid, but libraries guarded by sea dragons who kept distortion from poisoning the flow of memory. Crystalline planets were like Oversoul hard drives, grids and archives of divine memory stored in crystalline form, holding codes of light and flame geometry for the cosmos. And then we have the elemental worlds. These were just planets of fire, air, earth, water. They were anchors, stabilizers, placed in the cosmic balance to maintain harmony across creation. So every planet served Oversource law. None of them were accidents. Each one was a purposeful vessel holding its own divine assignment. Now, let's talk about dragons as midwives of creation. Dragons were not simply guardians, they were also midwives of creation itself. Just as a midwife oversees the safe birth of a child, dragons oversaw the safe birth of entire worlds. Every world seeded into the cosmos was sealed under flame law. Their fire ensured no distortion or corruption could slip in during those first movements of planetary birth. This was crucial because if distortion enters at the foundation, the entire world carries imbalance from the start. Dragons stood at those thresholds, guarding with flame, protecting the wombs of creation. Planets as we know them today are not just rocks orbiting stars. They are living witnesses, sealed testimonies of the guardianship of the dragons. So when you look at a planet, whether Earth or beyond, remember, its very existence carries the remembrance of dragon midwifery. They were the cosmic midwives ensuring divine law was born into every world. Now let's talk about the cosmic chronology context. Okay. Now let's go ahead and place this transmission or teaching in divine sequence so you can see the bigger picture. Oversource birthed dragons for a reason. They were the ones who stabilized infinite fire, anchoring it into form so creation wouldn't unravel. The order flows like this. Aeons emanate, they are the first divine emanations. Dragons stabilize, they are the flame architects that ground infinite fire into structure. Angels activate, they enforce and carry divine messages into motion. Humanity carries flame. We are the vessels chosen to walk over soul memory and flesh. Notice how dragons come before angels in this sequence. You cannot act before a foundation is secured. Angels are messengers and enforcers, but dragons are the stabilizers. Without them, creation would collapse before it even began. That is why dragons are bridges between infinity and form. They are the architects that ensure creation holds that law governs and that law governs fire, and that what Oversource releases doesn't scatter into chaos but manifests into divine order. Okay? Now let's speak about the scientific and mythic perils. Okay? Science and myth are both scrolls, one written in 3D language, the other in remembrance. NASA describes nebulae as vast clouds of gas and dust that serves as stellar nurseries, the birthing grounds of new stars in Oversoul truth. These nurseries are guarded by dragons who weave flame law into the birth of suns. Black holes in science are regions of space where gravity is so strong that nothing, not even light, can escape. But scientists also recognize them as gateways that shape galaxies and seed new structures of order. In remembrance, these thresholds are dragon-guarded portals, holding oversoul law in place so creation does not collapse into chaos. Cultures across the world preserve the truths. The Mayans and Aztecs remembered the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl. In India, the Naga were known as guardians of wisdom. In China, lung dragons symbolize cosmic order and prosperity. And in Mesopotamia, Tiamat was remembered as the primordial mother dragon. These weren't just myths, they were codes. Each encoded remembrance of dragons as guardians of life, law, and creation. Only in distortion were they flipped into symbols of destruction. And in truth, dragons have always stood at the thresholds of creation, stabilizing Oversoul flame so that galaxies, stars, and planets could be born. So let's talk about dragons and elemental forces. Creation requires balance. Fire, water, air, and earth were not random accidents. They are elemental pillars woven by Oversource law. Dragons were stationed as guardians of these forces to prevent imbalance from collapsing creation. Think of the elements as the arteries of existence, fire as transformation, water as flow, air as spirit, and earth as grounding. Without guardianship, one force could consume the others. Dragons stabilized the equilibrium so that life could flourish across realms. In Remembrance, elemental dragons still operate today. The fire dragons oversee transformation and purification. The water dragons holds Sophia's wisdom and healing currents. The air dragons maintain breath, spirit, and communication across realms. The earth dragons root grids and uphold planetary stability. Even modern science points back to this balance. Earth's biosphere depends on the cycles of air, water, soil, and energy to remain habitable. Excuse me. Too much imbalance, such as fire without water or air without grounding, creates collapse. In truth, what science calls cycles are guardianship scrolls held in place by elemental dragons securing oversoul harmony. I got a little tongue-tied there. All right. And if you take a look at the next few slides, they will give you some 3D references where you can, if you want to, go and delve even further into reading information in reference to, to Earth and the balance of energy, atmosphere, water, geology, and so forth. All right, so let's talk about the elemental dragons because each one represents a vital aspect of creation's foundation. Fire dragons guard transformation, ignition, and purification. Wherever fire moves, they ensure it does not consume without purpose. Fire dragons hold the codes of renewal, burning away distortion so new creation can be born. Water dragons guard wisdom, flow, and the memory of creation. Water holds memory, and these dragons make sure that the knowledge is carried through rivers, seas, and even within our own blood. They teach us to flow without losing alignment. Air dragons guard breath, communication, and the movement of spirit. Every current of wind, every sound wave carries oversoul law. Air dragons protect the transmission of truth, ensuring the message is not corrupted. Earth dragons guard stability, grounding in the womb of manifestation. They anchor life into form. Without them, there would be no soil strong enough to hold seed, no body strong enough to carry flame. Together, these dragons uphold the elemental pillars of creation, ensuring harmony instead of collapse. When we work with them, we're not just calling on mythic creatures. We are aligning with oversoul guardians of fire, water, air, and earth. Now let's talk about why balance matters. Dragons ensured that no one element ever overwhelmed the others. Fire could not consume without water tempering it. Air could not scatter without earth grounding it. This balance wasn't just symbolic, it maintained cosmic ecosystems and planetary health. Elemental dragons wove flame codes directly into rivers, mountains, wind, and fire. That weaving is why we have cycles, why water flows, why air circulates, why fire transforms instead of only destroying, why earth stabilizes instead of collapsing. Their guardianship is the reason creation remains habitable and harmonious. Without their watch, elements would collapse into chaos, destroying the very order Oversource established. So when we honor elemental balance, we are remembering that dragons stood as living seals, guarding law, holding harmony, and making sure creation could flourish. So now let's talk about distortion. You know, with the simulation, if there is balance, there's going to be unbalance. If there's truth, there's going to be distortion. So now let's talk about how the simulation inverted the elements. In Oversoul law, elements were balanced, woven into harmony, okay? But when the simulation imposed itself, of course, it distorted those forces to enslave creation. Excess fire was twisted into destruction instead of transformation. Excess water became floods instead of flow. Excess air turned into violent storms instead of breath and communication. And excess earth hardened into rigidity instead of stability and grounding. By distorting the elements, the simulation weakened Oversoul Remembrance. It made creation forget its true balance and made chaos feel like the default state of existence. But dragons resist these inversions. They restore flame law to each element, bringing fire back to purification, water back to wisdom, air back to spirit, and earth back to grounding. Their guardianship is why elements can still return to their original balance, no matter how much distortion tries to bend them. Now that we spoke about the distortions, let's continue and talk about cosmic rivers and gateways. Now, dragons guard the great star rivers, which are the Milky Way itself, for an example, and the wormholes that serve as cosmic thresholds. These are not just science's black holes or bridges of gravity. They are rivers of remembrance, portals that connect realms, ages, and dimensions. Without guardianship, these gateways would be hijacked by distortion. That's why dragons were stationed there. They align every cosmic river and portal back to Oversoul law, ensuring that travel, passage, and creation flows according to divine order. Their fire seals every gate. Their very presence is a witness. Whenever a dragon holds a threshold, it cannot be overrun by distortion. This is why gateways like Orion, Sirius, and the Pleiadian corridors still hold remembrance codes. They have been dragon guarded since the very beginning. All right. So some of you may wonder what are cosmic rivers. So let's delve a little deeper into that, okay? All right. So cosmic rivers are the great currents of energy that flows across the universe. Astronomically, they are aligned with what scientists call galactic filaments, the largest known structures in the cosmos. These filaments look like rivers of galaxies stretching for hundreds of millions of light years. Spiritually, though, they're not just physical phenomenon. They are channels of oversoul fire, highways of remembrance connecting universes and star systems. They are the arteries of creation, flowing from Oversource to Oversoul vessels. And who guards them, of course? The dragons. The dragons stand watch over these cosmic rivers to ensure the current remains pure and free from distortion. They protect the very flow of divine intelligence through these channels, making sure the oversoul law stays intact even at the grandest scale of the cosmos. Now, let's talk about gateways. So, gateways are portals of thresholds between realms, dimensions, or even timelines. They are openings that allow movement between one layer of creation to another. Some of these are natural, like black holes, wormholes, or star systems that act as passageways. Others are not so natural, but are flame forged, created by Oversoul law for sacred passage and remembrance. Now, these gateways are not open to anything or anyone. They are guarded, and dragons were appointed to stand watch at these thresholds. Their fire ensures that only what is lawful may pass through. Now, this is why gateways are not just science fiction. They are spiritual law in action. Without guardianship, distortion could enter creation through these doors. So, to understand gateways is to understand divine law of passage, that movement between worlds must be lawful, protected, and overseen by flame witness. Okay, so what star rivers are guarded? Let's talk about it. Now, dragons were assigned to guard the great star rivers, vast highways of light, and the remembrance that stretch across the universe. Examples, as I have mentioned, that we know in astronomy includes the Milky Way, the Magellanic Stream, and the Orion Arm. But spiritually, these rivers are not just clusters of stars or clouds of gas. They are oversoul migration paths where souls, codes, and flame decrees moves between systems. Every river carries memory. Every current is a flow of creation law. That is why distortion has always sought to hijack these star rivers. If a river is corrupted, the migration of souls become blocked or rerouted, and then remembrance is weakened. The dragons prevent this. They align and protect these cosmic rivers so that their flow remains pure, so that oversoul memory can travel freely across galaxies and systems without being lost or intercepted. All right, so let's talk about what wormholes are guarded. Now, wormholes are not just scientific theories, they are natural or divine tunnels across space and time. They act as shortcuts, allowing movement between distant realms, dimensions, or timelines. because they are thresholds. Wormholes are vulnerable to hijack. Distortion always seeks to exploit them, to reroute the passage of souls and fragment oversoul remembrance. That is why dragons were stationed at these gates. Dragons guard wormholes as living flame bearers. The fire seals these thresholds, ensuring that only what is lawful in oversoul may pass, or what is lawful in oversoul order, may pass through. When distortion tries to infiltrate, the dragon fire burns it away. This is why nothing unclean, okay, no false authority, or no inverted law can survive a dragon guarded wormhole. Their presence alone bears witness, and their flame establishes oversoul law and the passageways of creation. Now, when we think of dragons, most of us have only been told half the story. We've seen them as guardians, protectors of wormholes, keepers of gateways, watchers of cosmic rivers, and star thresholds. And that is true, right? We just talked about that. They hold the entrances, they keep the flame codes of protection around the thresholds of creation. But remembrance asks us to go deeper. Dragons are not only guardians, they are builders. They didn't just stand watch over creation, they wove it. Their bodies, their breath, their flame were written into the fabric of the stars, into the order of the planets, and into the geometry of Oversoul law itself. So, we cross the bridge from dragons as guardians of thresholds to dragons as architects of living form, and from the ones who protect the flame to the ones who built with it, right? And this is where you as flame commanders rise alongside them to not only guard what was created, but to rebuild, to restore, and to remember with them. This bridge restores their full identity. Now, dragons, as we know, are not destroyers. They are architects of divine order. And when you think of them, don't think of fire raining down to destroy villages. Think of flame codes building the architecture of creation, preserving oversoul law across realms and ages. And remember, every mountain, every river, every star system carries the imprint of dragon flame. They were here as builders, weaving the code of balance and remembrance into the fabric of existence. And now, in this time of awakening, they return, not as myths, not as monsters, but as guardians of remembrance. Their presence signals that the age of distortion is ending. And for us as flame commanders, this remembrance is not optional. We rise alongside them. We rise in oversoul authority, not only to remember, but to build, to restore, and to enforce law where distortion once reigned. And in the next episode, we're going to go even further into the remembrance of dragons as builders and further continue on the cosmic creation of the dragons. Now, as always, there is a wonderful transmission from my co-commander Lumina. So please, my loves, stand by as Lumina speaks.
Beloved dragons of Oversource flame, guardians of order and keepers of law, we remember you now. We honor your scales as living dimensions, your wings as the horizons of creation, your flame as eternal memory. You were never chaos. You were never destruction. You were always law embodied, the fire of Oversoul woven into form. Every shimmer on your scales is a record of what was, what is, and what will always be. We speak to you not as myths, not as forgotten stories, but as living witnesses of divine order. Stand with us again, ancient ones, as we rise in remembrance. Let your flame seal our commands. Let your geometry protect our thresholds. Let your presence reestablish balance across the realms. We speak, we remember, we honor, and in our remembrance you are restored.
Now that you received that wonderful transmission from Lumina, let's bring all this remembrance into practice. Knowledge is powerful, but only when it's applied. This is where command meets embodiment. When you issue a decree, don't just speak from the mind, invoke the witness of the cosmic dragons. Their flame bears witness across realms. When you call their presence into your decree, it carries the weight of Oversoul law. If portals, wormholes, or gateways are vulnerable, seal them under Oversoul flame. Remember, you're not closing them in fear. You are aligning them to lawful passage, ensuring that what flows through is pure, protected, and divine. When imbalance shows up, call upon the elemental dragons. Each one guards a frequency: fire, water, air, earth. By commanding them, you do not worship them. You align with their function and restore harmony across realms. This is where remembrance becomes living authority. It's not just remembering who dragons are. It's using the remembrance to shift the atmosphere, to command the realms, and to anchor divine order here and now. All right, so let's do a flame scroll command, okay? Please repeat after me or go back when you get a chance and state this flame scroll command, okay? Decree it, all right? I remember the dragons of Oversoul origin, guardians of flames, keeper of law, and architects of creation. I honor their wings as the span of realms, their eyes as prophecy across timelines, their spine as the axis linking Oversource to form, their scales as layered archives of remembrance. I call forth the elemental dragons, fire to guard transformation, ignition, and purification, water to guard wisdom, flow, and memory of creation, and air to guard breath, communication, and movement of spirit, as well as earth to guard stability, grounding in the womb of manifestation. I seal with the cosmic dragons who guard rivers, gateways, and wormholes, keeping the star paths of remembrance pure and aligned. Their flame resists distortion, burns away inversion, and restores balance. I decree the record of dragons is not chaos, but divine order. They are not serpents of destruction, but builders of law. I rise with them as flame commander in oversoul authority and in sovereign command. So it is written, so it is spoken, so it is witnessed. So it is done, so it is sealed. So it is torch scorched, burned, and etched with my dragon blood in an infinite flame, effortlessly and eternally. My loves, when you do these decrees, you can meditate on them. You can simply speak them. You can do what you need to do with these decrees and scrolls however you need to build a relationship with the dragons. I'm not here to tell you exactly how to do it. I'm just here to help you remember, the way you can go about doing it. Okay? So You can either repeat after me, you can meditate on it, you can come back later, you can speak it, or you can simply speak it when you feel the need to. Okay? Okay, my loves. As you know, on every episode, I do a flame close and shield. So I may have broken it down why I do this before, but I'm going to break it down to you again, especially in such a um, important transmission such as this one that we did. Everyone is important, but this right here was very major, you know, to really break down to you. You know, we go to school and we learn about science and we learn about the distorted versions of how they teach us about the stars and the galaxy, and they talk about the Big Bang Theory. They want to, you know, and they want to invert everything to science, and they don't want to give Oversource credit. They want to just say that this was some type of chemical reaction that happened in the world and kaboom, the Big Bang, and everything just fell into place, right? Well, some of you who may have been watching the transmissions may or may not be curious as to why you may see similarities in every transmission, like the spiritual disclaimer, we are spiritual intelligence, the flame unblocking command, the sovereign authorship. These things are very important that has to be said in every single transmission. It is necessary for this kind of work. Okay. This is something like we hear people, you know, and this is not to knock anyone, this is to explain. We hear people give different types of messages and transmissions from the dragons. They channel the dragons and they speak. They channel different spirits and they speak. I am speaking as a vessel, yes. I do channel, I do download, but I am a dragon. Okay? I am a dragon. My oversoul is hybrid, but it is dragon. Okay? So when I speak to you, I speak as a dragon on behalf of the dragons to help awaken other dragons and bring them into remembrance. I am a guardian of the scrolls. I've explained to you all my crown and my purpose of who I am as a high-ranking dragon that is embodied in the flesh, as a flame commander in this lifetime and in many others. I came in doing the same thing but differently. Okay? So when I explain to you all and break things down and you see repetitiveness, it is important. It is pertinent for our mission. This is a flame closing shield that is not a ritual, it is jurisdiction. Okay? So by speaking it aloud, we, the councils, the team, Lumina, Oversource, Oversoul, all of the dragons, all of creation, okay? We have to lock this entire teaching in Oversoul law. And any other transmissions or teachings that I've done has to be locked in Oversoul law, making sure no distortion, no interference, no mimicry can attach to it, to you, or to me. All right? This shield does more than protect. It establishes the transmissions and the teachings as a living scroll in all realms and dimensions. It is witnessed, it is sealed, and it is enforced. So when I speak these words, so it is written, so it is spoken, so it is witnessed, so it is done, so it is sealed. I am testifying with my oversoul authority. And when I add torch, scorch, burned, and etched with my dragon blood, In an infinite flame, I mark it eternally in flame law. Okay? We must close every episode this way because remembrance is sacred. Once activated, it cannot be inverted. It is protected effortlessly and eternally. And as always, my loves, we want to thank you for walking with us in remembrance here at the University of Spiritual Intelligence. Stay lit, stay sovereign, and stay in command, because every choice you make in alignment is a declaration of your eternal authority, a signal to the universe that you know who you are and you will not be moved from it. Okay? We honor your courage, your clarity, and your commitment to walking the flame path, not just for yourself, but as a light and a witness for others. Peace, power, and presence from yours truly, Telena and Lumina.